So there is two speakers at the roundtable, Laure Fallou from Euromed Seismological Center and Asma Steinhausse from the National Museum of Natural History. She's coordinating the Vigie-Terre and Vigie-Ciel participatory project at the museum. And Nam will the discussions. Nam, I'll let you know.
Yes, hi everyone. So let's start this roundtable.
Excuse me, I forgot to mention also that Sarah will participate to the discussion.
Yeah, yes, that's what I was going to say. Sarah Antier, that who we met earlier, will also participate with this roundtable. So yes, so in this roundtable we have three guests. So Sarah Antier, who we met earlier. So Sarah, you are a astrophysicist at the APC laboratory, and you are at the origin of the GAMMA project that you presented. Laure Fallou, you are a sociologist at the Euromed Seismological Center, and you study particularly the relation between citizen and seismic risk within citizen seismology projects such as LabEx that Rémi Bossu presented in the first part of our session today. And finally, you have Asma Steinhausse, who is a researcher at the National Museum of Natural History, Muséum National Naturelle, and you are a coordinator of both Vigie-Ciel and Vigie-Terre participatory science programs. So because Asma, we do not have a chance in this session to present your project, maybe you can start by telling us a little bit more about Vigie-Ciel and Vigie-Terre.
Hi everyone, thank you for the invitation, and just a small correction, I'm not a researcher.
Oh, sorry.
No, I did a PhD in genetics, don't say it. So I coordinate these two citizen science projects in the National Museum of Natural History, Vigie-Ciel and Vigie-Terre. Vigie-Ciel is supported by the Fripon scientific project carried out by the Paris Observatory. Fripon consists on continuously monitoring the sky with a network of 100 fish-eye camera and radio receivers to detect meteors and calculate orbits and the trajectory of sometimes the fallen meteorites. Vigie-Ciel invites witnesses to report fireballs and help researchers by analyzing the data from the cameras and to look for freshly fallen meteorites before they get altered. Vigie-Ciel also contains another program called Vigie-Cratère, which invites participants to search for impact crater on satellite and topographic images on the Earth, and to vote on the structures discovered by the other participants, and also by adding photography of the field for the best candidates found by participants and the researchers to do further research about these best candidates. Vigie-Terre is another program, is a new one. It's in geology, a citizen science program that it invites participants to report rock outcrops, les affleurements géologiques, uncovered during natural phenomena such as landslides or during landscaping work, for example. The goal is to characterize these structures before they are recovered and before the information get lost. This program involves also, like Vigie-Ciel, a network of partners across France, association involved in science. I'm also involved in different networks and initiatives about citizen science at the Museum and Sorbonne University, Alliance Sorbonne Université, like Vigie-Museum, which regroups about 40 citizen science programs in the museum, Sciences Ensemble, which is a network, and the website in Sorbonne University Alliance. It's a Sorbonne Alliance initiative to inform the public about researchers' project based on citizen science and to encourage the public to contribute to them. Donc, Sciences Ensemble and Vigie-Museum and Vigie-Terre and Vigie-Ciel, and I will give you the in the chat the address to to go in the website.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Asma, for your presentation, and thank you to send us the link in the chat whenever you want. So I'm turning to Laure right now. So Laure, maybe you don't have to present LabEx project, but maybe you can tell us more about what you do as a sociologist in a citizen seismologist project. Yes.
So I think I'm interested in citizen science in two ways. So first, I'm involved in some citizen science projects. So Remy told about LabEx, and that we were going to increase the LabEx project with the LabExers community. So the idea is just to make a platform for citizens to exchange ideas and comments about earthquake fields and learn together from each other. And I'm also involved in a citizen seismology project in IT, where we the goal is, Remy told a little bit about it this afternoon, but the goal is to set some seismic sensor, local seismic sensor at some citizens' house. So they are volunteers and they accept to host this. This is called a Raspberry Shake, so they host it. And then we assess how they understand the seismic information that they can get from the seismic sensor. We also try to see if this has an impact on the community and if it can raise awareness. So the goal is to increase the seismic data that are available for the whole country and to build a seismic network, but also to increase risk awareness. So it's really a citizen seismology project in the way that is two ways. So we bring something to the citizens and the citizens bring something to us. And we always, because it's new, we're always trying to assess if it works or not and what we should do for it to work better. And that is linked also to another, it's not a project, but more a research that I've done on citizen seismology. And it's related to Mayotte case, where there were a lot of earthquakes that were really mysterious at first. It started in 2018, May 2018, and there were no information about what causes the earthquake. So the citizens started to gather on Facebook and to exchange ideas. So it was like a citizen seismology community, but without seismology. So that's what I studied as a researcher. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Laure. Yes, so the subject of this table, so of this round table, is mainly about the citizen participation and how do we engage with citizens in science projects, such as the one you are all involved. So maybe we'll ask with we start with Sarah. Maybe can you tell us more about the public that you try to engage with in your project? Who are the citizens that are involved in the Grandma project, and how did you manage to find them and talk to them and involve them with your project?
Yeah, so I answer a bit to this question, but basically we were motivated to find astronomers because we wanted more observation. So first, the citizen science that we tackle are the observer that will help to collect more data. And because multi-messenger is connected to faint transients, there are more people that are used to have bigger telescope that I mean, all the amateur community, astronomy amateur community. So it's more referring to the maybe 10% of amateur. That's why we need to drive the citizen science program worldwide. So not only on a specific region in France, but worldwide. And also our multi-messenger motivation needs to have, I mean, amateur all over the world. So that's why I said that we try to rely on two things. So one thing is the press media and as I say in France, that works quite nice, but is not well organized. And the other one is to is to rely on the different people from different countries, the different scientists that can also try to find amateur with their own language on their country. And I think about China, for example, for that.
Okay, and what about you, Asma, in your project, in your different projects that you're coordinating? Who are the people, the citizens that are trying to involve in Vigie-Ciel or Vigie-Terre or Vigie-Terre?
The first thing to say is at the beginning of the project, we have a first idea of the typology of the participants. And after we launched the project and we see that we move less away from the initial idea because unexpected participants may show interest. For example, for Vigie-Ciel, we first thought of amateur astronomers because we are interested in meteors. And finally, we realized that a wide variety of people could be interested in the project. People who are fascinated, for example, by meteorites, who like to observe the sky and shooting stars, who like to go outside and look for something fascinating and rare with other peoples and share their passion. So we have also teachers, science facilitators who are interested in the project because they want to involve their students, their visitors, and interest them in our study topics through the participation. And something very important in all our project is we rely on a network of relays throughout France, associations, planetarium, natural parks, museum, and we provide them several tools they need to work with the participants on their territory over the long term, and create regular meetings such as exhibitions, training, conferences, and events, going outside with them and to see signal outcrops with them, or look observing sky or looking for meteorites together. And this dimension, territorial dimension, is very important because people want to know which are the persons who can help them to better understand the topic of the project and participate more and more and answer to all the question which arise from this interest.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because what you're saying is depending on which aspect of your project you are focusing on, it's not the same public with not the same questions and the same source of engagement that we require to make them involved in your project. So I have the same question for Laure. Maybe you can tell us more about who is interested in citizen seismology and how do you involve people in citizen seismology?
And I would also have a kind of the same answer as Asma. So you can have an idea of who you want to reach, but in the end, it may be a totally different audience. The idea is just that you adapt to the people who want to get involved in your project. So for Lastquake, for example, we could not really, well, there was no seismology amateur community that was already organized. And the people we're actually reaching are not necessarily amateur, they are just people who feel earthquakes. But then we also have a small community of amateurs that want to get more information about earthquakes, but more on a scientific way. Because the point with earthquake, it's a risk. It's not only a science, it's also a risk. So we may get two audiences. And the idea, if we want to raise awareness about the risk, etc., is we can use the science to get them interested. So that's just that's really specific about earthquakes, and that may be different from Sarah's project. And I think particular specificity also about what we're doing in citizen seismology is we get a really global audience, so that's we need to deal with cultural aspects. For example, in the project we're doing in IT, well, the scientific culture is rather low, so we need to adapt to that. So when we propose, when we ask volunteers if they want to host a Raspberry Pi, for example, they may not perceive the scientific aspect of it. They may just be interested by the technology or by the data they can gather, or maybe they will find it that they will imagine that it's a kind of magical box and they will be interested by that. So we need to adapt to that. And that's also an interesting challenge in citizen science.
Yeah, of course. So that's a good point. And maybe I try to develop a little bit. Say, how do you engage citizens in a science project when they're not particularly motivated by this scientific aspect of the science project? How do you do that?
Well, I think, well, with earthquakes, you can still argument that it's going to help protect themselves against the risk, or they are going to help their community in a way. I think a lot of people that got engaged in the Haitian project, for example, they did it for the country's good. So that was not for themselves, but more for society as a whole. And they wanted to help the country develop, etc. So I think you just need to find what will get them interested, which requires to know them and to ask them. Not only ask them because sometimes they don't know, but also maybe suggest them something and test if it works or not. I think in citizen science there's still a lot of testing, trying and see.
Yeah. So it's a different problem, I guess, for Sarah, because people who are engaged in your project are, of course, interested in the scientific aspects of your of LAMDA. But what are the reasons for them to engage and to be part of your project? Can you tell us more?
Yeah, so I think that when Asma were presented at first, I think we are not in the same step like Asma project. We are just at the beginning. I mean, it's just like 1.5 years. So yeah, we first maybe tackle first our need, and then maybe Winston, and we will find other public. But basically, yeah, the public is interesting. Okay, they are interesting about gravitational wave. To do something with gravitational waves, they were not, oh, I will observe kilonovae. It's just gravitational waves. They are very, voilà. And so I think what we try to do for the moment, I did not say it explicitly, but it's to have the club as a relay for us. And in this club, there are not only the one that are, you know, engineer plus and that know how to operate telescopes, but it can drive also les curieux or les intéressés into this club to participate more citizens, and maybe they can, you know, they can be involved in some sums just for the science and not for the operational part of contribution parts. And so I hope that it will drive this force, you know, it's like Kenda, you can see Kenda Groma like an association, because in fact, an association, a virtual association, because in fact, to make this citizen science program working, it's not only collector, it's also, as Rémi said, a person in communication, person that knows how to translate, in fact, the scientific presentation or scientific, I don't know, explanation or researcher explanation to something that is understandable. There are also I remember that there were a journal that wanted to traduce for a 6-year-old kid, you know, about what is grammar. so I think this kind of citizen science that maybe have skill and they can be, how can I say, receptor of the science, not only, you know, with us in our laboratory, just talking to researchers. I think they can help in this kind of traducing science to the general public and traducing science also, not only for engineer plus, as I said, but also kids and so on and so forth. So I see like this an extension to this project.
Yeah, that's a very good point that you raised. But maybe before going a little bit further with this, we'll take the question of Anne in the comments for Laure. Maybe can you try to give an answer to Anne's questions?
Perhaps I can repeat it.
Yeah, maybe Anne, can you repeat the question first and for everyone?
Connection with an actual phenomenon. I was wondering if you had an idea about that, why people usually are so happy to collect data to participate to science. And for the case of the Stop COVID application, people were really not, because I heard that it can also help to understand better the phenomena and the science of the epidemic, but people are really not very motivated to participate to this one. So.
Well, I think so it depends on the type of data they need to give. So, for example, for Stop COVID, you need to give private, personal data, private ones. And that's the more tricky ones to share with someone that you're not really sure, and it's also not really always transparent, etc. For example, for LabEx, we need the location of the users, and that's really personal data, and we have sometimes troubles to get it. So we need to explain why we are getting it, and I think the users are getting it, are sharing that with them. Users are sharing that with us because we explain them, and they really need the information, and they also are in a sense of emergency, and so they will share it because the information is valuable to them at that precise time, so they will share it. I think with Stop COVID, it's more like you share it on the long term, and it's not, there's no sense of emergency. You're not really seeing how it's going to help you personally, and you're not really sure it's going to help society as a whole. Also, you need, well, also it's the government. So it depends also that on the relation that the users have with the government, I guess. So that's just my opinion, and I haven't done proper research on that. But I think if I was to compare why they would share location with us and not with Stop COVID, for example, I would say that. So it's a matter of sense of emergency and transparency, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Laure, for this answer. To come back to the point raised by Sarah, so it's interesting because all you three, you have a really different public that you try to reach between witness of events, between curious or people who are really knowledgeable of scientific concepts. And so it also means that you, as a coordinator of those projects, you are involved in a sense participating science project. You have to talk to them, to be able to answer your question, depending on what kind of public you are dealing with. So it's sort of a challenge, I guess, that maybe you are trying to solve. So maybe Asma, can you tell us more about some of your challenges, everyday challenges that you have to meet while dealing with different kind of public and different demands or question or
about competence we need to have to coordinate this. Okay, in fact, although not all the citizen science projects are the same, there are several differences. Many of them require several skills related mainly to public involvement. Next to, with researchers, we need web developers, we need data scientists, we need community manager, partner network animators, sociologists, and I forget, I think I forget some of them. These skills are necessary to achieve the project's objectives. So, which means that without them, the project could end. If, for example, a website is not easy to use to put data, if we don't have someone to coordinate the network of partner which deploy the project in the territory, the dynamic runs out of steam, and it's sometimes more simple to launch a new citizen science project than to maintain an existing citizen science project and sustain it in time. So we need many people several competence and different people to run a project next to researchers, and it's very structural and necessary to achieve the objectives of the project.
Yeah, Sarah, you wrote in the chat about being agreeing with Asma about the data platform and web. Can you tell us a bit more about your point of view on those questions?
Yes, so this is why we ask some money for University of Paris for grandma is because, you know, they, for example, me, I see the observer, they, you know, they enjoy, they do it at their free time, and so they don't want to spend something about complicated. They just like take data and plugging, and so that's why I think a nice platform that need in fact competency in terms of web development that is maybe not in our lab, you know. I mean, it's not like, you know, a scientific platform that is you know, exhaustive and so on. No, it needs to be a bit pedagogic, a bit sexy, let's say, so that, you know, they can enjoy, you know, for example, connecting with us. So that's why I reached Asma that it is okay, and also to have some pedagogic content, not only, you know, scientific article, or not only you know, a summary that done by the media that is very general, you know. So that's why I think also the material access to this platform and the way with different support, so it can be 1-minute video or long talk, or coming to, I'm sure that Asma is doing that, going to meet these people and make, you know, Q&A discussion, etc., etc. We need to multiply, in fact, the material, support material, and this needs other competence that only the scientific and technical that we have in our lab.
Yeah, so you're talking about outreach, popularization of science, of your concept, because if you want to involve citizens, they need to at least understand some of the science behind it. Yes.
Yeah, and just to add a thing that if a scientist thinks it's bug, I don't know, is bugging, it's fine. But for example, you need to have something that's running all the time, and they do not have difficulty. Otherwise, they will say, okay, this is not working, and I will go to another, I don't know, citizen science program or so on. So you need to keep them, you know, tuned, and you have maybe less total plugging from for example, from scientific, you know, with all couteau suisse stuff, let's say, but very easy and very reliable and robust.
Yeah, so your engagement that you need, at least for your project, is more like long-term engagement from your participants. And also another competencies, another skills that Asma raised earlier that could be useful for a participatory science project is having a sociologist in your team. So I will point to Laure, who is actually a sociologist. So maybe you tell us more why, as a sociologist, why do you think you are useful having participating in projects? Yes.
You'll ask Remy what he thinks, but no, I think what is really important is to understand both the users and the scientists. So if you understand, and that's, as a sociologist, is kind of your role to understand people. And what they need and how they need it, what are they using as technologies, because you need to use the technology that they use and not just to create something that they will just never use because they don't know how it works. So it's really important to take time to understand the people. That's also why I was asking Jean-Luc about how was he assessing the results with the teachers. Thanks, Remy. So it's really important to assess the needs. So I think that's also why sociologists are important. But I agree that we need long-term projects because it takes time. I mean, science takes time. So citizen science takes even more time. So yes.
Yeah. So that's also the point in your chat that Jean-Luc is raising. Maybe Jean-Luc, you want to say something if you want. You can open your mic if you wish.
Oh, just no more than I have written. So it seems that when you run a project, maybe it works nicely. So you have it's successful, but I feel that people wait to new project to engage by themselves about participative science. Sometimes they are more interested by new things instead of maintain something that is running well. So sometimes I am a little disappointed, but about this. But well, maybe it's the way of the things are running. So in our case, we know that every 3 years we have to propose new things, new ways, new entrances to be sure to maintain the enthusiasm or the engagement of the people. Yeah. And so, well, I'm just disappointed. It's not maybe it's not so bad maybe to be obliged to create something new, but it's not necessary to create something new just to create something new. So it's just this point.
Yeah, I guess you agree with that. It's a difficult task to permanently solicit and engage people in your project. I guess that's what you mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I see that Remy has a point to make about the place of sociology. Maybe you can tell us a bit more.
What I was just saying is that for citizen seismology, it's probably even more important because we are also dealing with risk. Risk is a social construction, and we are also dealing with personal experience of earthquakes. So which deals with personal experience, so emotions, anxiety, cultural factors, etc. So all this part we do need sociology. We cannot do it only with seismology because that's beyond the technical aspects and scientific aspects.
Okay, thank you.
We need to understand scientists also. So we need to understand seismologists.
Okay,
which is also a good part.
Thank you for both your inputs. So maybe to come back to the concept of participatory and citizen science in general.
Madame,
yes,
excuse me, there is a question from Claire.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Claire,
exactly about what you started with, this distinction between science participative, citizen science, and crowdsourcing. We have a tendency to use one for another. And I know that a few years ago, after the rapport Houillet and all these things, there were long debates about what it's all about and that it should be different. And so is this debate closed, died, or can I do what I want as a scientist, or do I still have to be very specific?
Asma, you have an answer to this question?
Yes, I will try. You will find people who are very
spécifique.
Qui veulent vraiment voilà, cataloguer. Who wants to have to use the specific term to characterize their project, and I don't belong to this team because I think that in one citizen science project you can evolve. You can have between the beginning of the project and then years after the way you implicate participants, the way we do science, the way we involve people, the new questions which arise sometimes from participants, while the first questions arise from researchers. So we can't judge a project at an instant T. And I find it very difficult to put an etiquette and to say this program is crowdsourcing, recherche participative, science participative. Voilà. I think we can say we do recherche participative with S, and then voilà. In my opinion, we don't have to insist about this this
Yeah, so you're not into label between the
Well,
between.
It's also a very French problem because citizen in France doesn't mean the same thing as in other countries. So when I tried to explain what the debate was about being a citoyen or being people looked at me like she's nuts. Huh? So okay, so I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's a really good point. Indeed, we right now you are using both participatory science or citizen science as the same object, but it is indeed for some people different aspects of the same, not exactly the same. Yeah. So to come back to this concept, is including citizen. General audience to scientific project? Is it a new way to do science? And why in your project it is not only important but mandatory to include citizen in your scientific research? Maybe Sarah first. Maybe can you tell us why did you want to go through a scientific and participatory science project for your research?
Yeah, well, it is simple because we don't have enough telescopes under the planet to drive all the science, not only the science about multi-messenger, but all the science as in astronomy. And me, I am part of the science that stop routine observation that is on program. So it can stop some observation that, maybe we're using, full night of observation for, I don't know, for another project. And so this is number one. And number two, the good news is that the price for the telescope that are enough competitive is going down. So that's why the amateurs, they can have some telescope that is okay for our science. So both of the two help to have this force of amateurs that can help as a multi-messenger science. So I try to make it very simple. So just to come back a little for the discussion just previously. So us in GRANMA, we choose for the moment to adopt, to mentor our amateur, which means that we know them. I have a call with them tonight. It is not like the universe when you have, for example, Galaxy on your smartphone and you make a play, to distinguish the galaxy, and maybe they are not concerned about the science. Or we try more to fulfill some dream of people that wanted to be at a time astrophysicist or at a time astronomer and participate. And so we have our amateur also in our paper, in our scientific paper that is by alphabetic order. And so an amateur is somehow in the same level of citizens. So we have a very targeted, maybe we will explore that more as Asma has done, and I'm very impressed, but this is how we do things.
Okay. Maybe same question for Asma. Why in your project that you do in the museum, did you decided to involve citizen in general?
I will speak in general. In one hand, we have many experts among the citizens, many passionate people, amateurs, and many curious people. And in the other hand, we have research projects that could not succeed without the involvement of the general public. Some scientific questions require a large amount of data distributed over a large area, data that could disappear, like meteorites or outcrops, if people don't report the information or look for this data, specific data. Or sometimes we need a lot of people to analyze data. It's also our case because we have different protocols in Vigie-Ciel, and one of them is to analyze the data. People analyze the data with the scientists. So it's necessary to consider these research projects involving the public like any other research project. Some of them don't require people, and it's normal, it's okay. But we have to consider these research programs the same. And
okay.
for us, meteorites, outcrops, it's the participants of people is not just to make them participate. It's important to answer to the scientific question, and without them, we can't progress.
Yeah, so you once your scientific question emerge, and the need for participatory is emerged as well, I guess.
Was natural, yes.
Yeah, okay. Laure, so you, as we see before when Remy presented the last quake, we see that how much data from citizens are quite useful and quite efficient to prevent risk. But maybe I was so I will take the opposite question, and what might be the limits of the citizen participation in science projects?
I was ready for the other question.
But you can answer you can answer both questions if you.
I just wanted to say I'm going to answer the other, but I would just wanted to say first it's efficient, of course. Well, Remy's presentation was all about how efficient it is, not only for scientists but also for citizens. So I think that's really a huge point for citizen seismology. Also, it's necessary, so because it raises awareness, etc. And it's really useful, I think, because and then I'm going to talk about another project I'm working on. But with citizen science, you can explain how science is made, and I think with misinformation going on, it's a really important point to explain how we make science and why it takes time and why we can or cannot provide such an information at some point. So I think that's really important, and not only in seismology but for all science. And what are the limits? Well, I think it's really time demanding, and it requires some specific skills that are sometimes rare, and you need money for that. And there are a few fundings for a citizen science project. So I think that's one of the main limits I'd see to that, because it requires really people to answer the needs and to build tools that are adapted to citizens. So yes.
Yeah. Well, that's a good answer. One aspect of cost that Sarah evokes earlier was the price of equipment. So Sarah, you told us that nowadays people are able to buy some astronomy equipment, telescopes that are sufficient for your project. But it's still quite a cost, I guess.
Yes, so to find on that, number one is that the clubs, they can afford good equipment, but it's more, we see the rise of the citizen science, even if it's not the term that you employ. But I remember that maybe last year it was a recommendation from G7, like it was said, a recommendation from Sciences Participatives alors Internet, which is exactly the point, I think, of our 3 project or Remy project, I guess. So this is what he said. Now in practice, it needs to be done and to be one of the branch of making research. And so it needs other competence, but that just a community driven only with scientists and PhD students and engineer and operator and so on and so forth. And I think this conversion into, okay, how I can reach these people that it is a gain, I should say link, needs more competency and maybe grants that allow flexibility, in some sense, as my colleague said, maybe it's not the same thing that we need at the beginning, but also at long term to challenge them, to still maintain the community, etc., etc. And so I think when we are the precursor of that, maybe it needs to turn into a routine to integrate routinely citizen science program to science and have a real place, even if I know that the money for research is very low. I think it is very oppressed. So this is my position. So afterwards, act.
Yeah. And Asma, maybe do you have something to add to what Sarah is saying?
I just about the benefits, which is mutual. Participants, they develop skills, learn a lot about their area of interest, and collaborate with others, and they participate because they like collaborating with others. They also question researchers in their methods, their results, and discuss them like any other collaborator, researcher collaborator. So when we involve more people, when we work with participants in general public, it's also a collaboration, scientific collaboration, and it also sometimes modify things in the way to do research, and because a researcher have to treat all the have to answer to all these new questions, understand all these point of views about their subject, and it's very the benefits is really mutual.
Okay. I see that Anne asked a question in the chat. Maybe you can open your mic to.
Yes. So I was wondering, because there's many examples, but generally, what is the more efficient when you want to create such a project to rely on existing structure of the civil society, like association, clubs, school, that are always the structure, or directly go to individual people?
Yeah. Asma, please.
Doing both, because to reach different people you have to use different ways. So it's very important to have this network of collaborators and partners on the territory, and then to address directly to individual citizens by communicating in social media, in journals, in websites. And sometimes you will find, and we have these participants in Vigie-Ciel, for example, ambassadors, which are very involved participants, and which can help a lot if you let them take a part, a real part in the project. They help us a lot to find new participants, to answer to questions, to help us to make the project more known. So these ambassadors from the general public, sometimes you meet them, and then you work with them all the way along the project.
Yeah, you became your colleagues in your project. Yeah. Laure, if you have something to add on to this point.
I just wanted to confirm. I mean, it's really critical to consider that there are different level of engagement. So yes, ambassadors, they are great, and you need to rely on them and to give them as many tools and power as you can, so that they can help us, and they would just do a great job. And then you mustn't forget the others that may not know as much, that may not have the network, but they are still interested. So it's really crucial to understand the different levels of engagement in your project.
Yeah, maybe you can tell us more about the profile of those kind of ambassadors in the project that you are involved.
Well, it's different depending on the different projects, I guess. Unfortunately, we don't have enough data as a sociologist may want for last week. So we have a base of people really, of users who are really interested in earthquake. Then they are going to share their experience. They are going to follow us on Twitter, on the app, etc., and give us a lot of information. There are also some users that are just going to use our app once and then delete it because they don't live in a seismic area. So it's really yes, different. And for the IT project, we have we have the people who host a Raspberry Shake. So they are the most committed users and volunteers we have, and they have a really different well, they have different motivations and a different profile. So that's also, and we are currently researching and doing interviews with them to understand more about them. So I will be able to tell you more maybe in 2 months.
Okay. I see that Remy Bossu is saying that you can explain Matteo. Okay, Sarah, if you...
Remy, you can explain Matteo if you want.
Just to explain, we have one guy, Matteo, who spent his life checking every potential mistakes between on our site, checking all the earthquake info websites in the world and saying, oh, but you didn't report it, this one, and send private message. And if you don't answer him in the minutes, then he publish this on Twitter, etc., etc. So sometimes it's a pain, but it can be also very useful because it did help us a number of times to identify some problems. So yeah, and we never look for such person. They just appear. And it is the same, for example, during a sequence of earthquake, you can get a lot of support. It was the case for after the earthquake in Croatia, in Albania. In Albania, we were invited, they organized the hackathon for us in Albania because we are NGO, we are an association not for profit, so NGO, so we have limited means. So they organized a hackathon for us in Tirana last February. We had some people who made quality assessment of our app in ergonomy, etc., and send us it for free, etc., etc. So you can get a lot of supports. I think what is key is to be fully open, so to be transparent, open. But when you manage to build this trust, they can be extremely supportive, even financially. We are open to donation, and we do collect donation.
And they also translated the app. I mean, the app has only been translated by volunteers. So.
Yeah, so I think it's time to conclude. We are already a little bit late after the time that we spent. So maybe if you have each one like a bit of conclusion that you want to say, maybe Sarah first, you have something to conclude that you want to say to us.
Oh, I just want to thank you, Nam and Anne, to give us the opportunity to have this discussion. Honestly, just preparing this this discussion and with this current discussion, let's say, with my colleague, we saw that there was a lot of synergy and maybe even contacts that we can share. And so just my takeaway message, but maybe in another discussion, is to share tools of citizens. Maybe there are some identification of some tool or practice that we can share, also about data policies that we can share, what communication work and so on. So I would like to say that thank you again for make the bridge between different scientific motivation, but finally the process is common.
You're welcome. Laure, maybe you have something to add before concluding?
Well, I was going to say, well, if you don't know how to start by the network and ask questions. I mean, citizen science is really a growing network, and it's become more and more structured. So do not hesitate to reach out to and to follow for example, the European Citizen Science Association. They are doing a fantastic job at gathering tools and resources. So we can learn a lot from each other, and that's also why I think it was a great event today. So thank you for inviting us.
Okay. Yeah,
Attach the link.
Link will be available on the LabEx website on the page of the events. So for if you want later to go further in the subjects that we develop during the school, all link will be available. And Asma, maybe something to say as well.
Thank you for the invitation. It was very interesting. So I just want to say that the successful citizen science project, to achieve this success, we need time, because they are ambitious, often multidisciplinary, and they involve many participants, partners, and the different dimension must be considered: research, teaching, citizen engagement, changes in practice that these projects induce. So they need a specific evaluation grid and funding along the project. So, and we program leaders and must learn also from each other. I personally learned a lot from my colleagues from Vigie-Nature, which is a program which exists from maybe more than 10 years now. And they work on insects, butterflies, birds, and they have more experience, and we share common questions, even if we work on different scientific issues. So people who work on citizen science win a lot to work together and share experience to progress and save time. And just an information, for example, in the Muséum and Sorbonne create Unité Mixte de Service to help people who want to create a new citizen science project in method, to give them methods and technical help to build, for example, websites, and it helps us to save time and voilà, de bénéficier de l'expérience précédente.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so the conclusion is that if you want to start your citizen science project, you do not hesitate. Ask your colleagues who do this for some time. There will be great resources and great help for your project. Yeah. Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you again for your participation.
Thank you.
Maybe Anne would like to say something to conclude this session in this school.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to all the speakers of the day. I think it was a very interesting session with very diverse experiences that have been shared. At least I learned a lot of things, so I'm very happy. So it was the last session of the school, so I would like to thank again all the speakers for the quality of their talks that made this edition of the LabEx School a success. Even with this screen between us, it was, I think, there was an event particularly rich with many interaction and various experiences shared, and also it allows to have a room for discussion between different community, which is pretty rare, at least in my environment. So concerning the organization of the school, I would like to thank Aurelia and Nam to have coordinate all the program and the logistic with me, and also to thank the LabEx executive board for its support. And so I hope to see some of you next year for the next school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.